All right, everybody, welcome back to the series. In the last episode, we worked on our Android app and being able to not necessarily add products, but get the basic skeleton form for adding those products. And today we're going to do the same thing for our iOS app, so make sure you have an iOS emulator or device running. And what we're going to do is give ourselves a way to go from the products page to the edit products page. And we're going to do that with a package. So yes, I'm actually going to use a package where we create this toolbar here that has a plus sign, and that will allow us to go to our add product page. It should look basically the same as our material, except for when we click on the drop-down button, instead of getting that material drop-down button, we're going to get an iOS picker. All right, so none of this is hooked to the back end yet, so nothing's going to save here, but we're just going to bring ourselves even and par with where we were in the Android app when we left off in the last episode. So before we boot up the emulator, I do want to go get that package. And so the package is called Cupertino _toolbar. So I'll research it so it gets near the top. Yes, it gets a low score, but that's primarily from popularity and lack of maintenance. But it seems to be perfectly healthy, or like gets 100 on the health score. So I'm going to go ahead and use it for now, and we can replace it later if we need to. So I'll copy that, and I'm going to put it in my app or my pubspec.yaml file, and then I'm going to boot up the emulator. All right, so I've got my app booted up. I'm on the products page. I have no way to get to the edit product page currently. So that's where we're going to use this package to create a toolbar down here with a plus sign that looks more iOS oriented to substitute for the Fab button that we used in Material. So if we go to widgets page and we go to products, we have a Cupertino page scaffold here, and what I want to do is just in place of the child, and you can refer to the package documentation if you'd like for this. Not a whole lot to it, but what you can do is put in a Cupertino toolbar, and that takes in a body, and the body is what we're going to put in our page body here. So we'll just put that back. And then it takes a list of items. And so those items are Cupertino toolbar items. And so we only have one. We just want to add a plus sign. So Cupertino toolbar item, and it takes an icon, an on pressed, and a semantic label. And so the icon that would make the most sense would be Cupertino icons.add, and I'm going to do add circled. I looked at the Notes app in iOS, and this really kind of mirrors what's going on there. And then the on pressed is going to be a navigator. So I'm just going to take this and paste it in here and format that like so. And so there it is. It brings us to our add product page. It's good. I have no option to make this a little bigger. I don't have an option to change this to our gold color. That's really why I don't necessarily like packages too much. It's also why I don't like to fly. I got to be in control of these things. But I think we'll just let it go for now. And this is the kind of thing that you could iterate back to and improve. When you look at the Cupertino toolbar, so you go and you look at the definitions here. There's not a lot here, so we could kind of copy and paste this into our own widget, except for up here, copyright. There is a license for distribution and usage details, so we could check that out, and maybe it's possible to modify it under the license. But for now, I'm just not going to worry about it. Going to let it go. So we'll push that and we'll go into our add product, and this looks okay. This doesn't look bad, except for we are missing the unit type, which is our drop-down button. So if we go into our widgets and our drop-down button, we can see why that is. If we come into our drop-down button widget that we built last time, we have all this code down here for when it is not iOS, and then we have an empty container when it is iOS. And so it's returning an empty container and we see nothing on the screen. There's some errors here on the focus as you flip through this, and we will circle back and fix those. So don't worry about those for now. I'm aware of those, and we will fix them. But what I'm going to do for starters is I'm going to copy all of it. I'm going to copy the padding and everything. Actually, I'm just going to copy the return down to the padding, and I'm going to put that over the container here. So this will become the is iOS, because a lot of that we want to keep. We want, and it's going to error for now, but we want the box decoration and the border and all that stuff. It's really just the drop-down button here that we want to replace. And so we'll keep a large portion of this and just replace what we need to. So let's take out this whole widget here, this drop-down button, because that's a material. So we want to take that out. And what I want to replace that with is a gesture detector. And what I want to do, and so all of this will give us our surrounding border here. And what I want to do is just have a text in the middle. And when you click on it, it's going to go to the picker. And so the child of our gesture detector can just be a text. And we can give it, at least for starters, the hint text. I need to have a child there. Should have a hint text property here. It's a stateless widget. Duh. All right, so we got a hint text, and we can give it a style, and the style that we've used is our suggestion, which I wish I'd named hint, because that's where we end up using it. But anyway, we'll do text styles.suggestion. And then we'll give that an on-tap method. And when they tap that, we want to show a Cupertino modal pop-up, because that is the way to show an iOS picker, and it takes a context, and it takes a builder. I'm going to wrap that around here. So the builder takes a build context, and then we'll do some curly braces. Get my semicolon in there, and I'm going to create a helper just so I don't clutter up the widget tree here. And I'm going to create a private helper called select iOS. And so that'll take a build context, and a list of string items, which is the same list of string items that we use to build our material items up here. Remember, we talked about that in the last one, that we would use the list of string to build a drop-down menu item list for material and a widget list for Cupertino. And so in here, we want to return another gesture detector, because when we tap on detector, detector. No, there was going to be a spelling test today. It's because when we tap on the picker, we want it to register that and pass that on to our state. So when we on tap, we will actually, of context, we'll actually pop off the modal. So I misspoke there because we will use the gesture detector to pop the modal. And then there's an onSelected item change property of the picker that we use to update our state. So we'll give the gesture detector a child, and that'll be a container. And that container will actually contain or kind of encapsulate our picker, so it has a defined size on the screen. And so we'll give it a color, and it will just kind of default to the color. So this, what happens when you go to a picker is the whole screen will gray out, and the container actually grays out with it. But you can override that with colors white. And then it really does stand out against the background. You give that container a height, and then you give it a child, and the child is going to be finally a Cupertino picker. And this has a few required fields which are somewhat ill-defined, but item extent is the height of an item. So if you imagine kind of the wheels it spins around, the piece of the wheel that would be kind of flat and facing you, that's the item extent. So we're going to say 45 on that. And then it needs some children, and these are widgets. And so to do that, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to copy this method, and we're going to set the method to build Cupertino items from that list of strings. And so like I said, this is building a list of drop-down items for material, and we actually just want a widget, and a text widget will be fine. And so we can get rid of a lot of this. So we can get rid of this, and we can pass it our item, so that'll be the text that goes in the text widget. We still want a text-align center, so we'll do text-align center, and then it doesn't take a value, but it will take a style, so we'll go ahead and define that here. We didn't define that up here because the picker or the drop-down had its own styles that it applied to the body of the picker or of the drop-down in material, but that's not the case here with the picker. So we need to apply the styles on each of the text widgets that we pass into the list. So we'll just do body. All right, so that should be all set. We just need to come up here, and we're not passing it a list of menu items anymore. We're passing it a list of widgets. And now that's happy. So when it comes to children for the picker, we can just call that function and let it pass the items in there. So we will do build Cupertino items, and we want to pass in the items, which is why we put it in the constructor up here, or the parameters up there. And then it takes another double, which is called diameter ratio. It can't be 0. 1 seems to work just fine. I've gone through the documentation. I don't completely grasp it. I've played with it. If you set it for more than 1, then the values kind of tuck under each other. And so that's not really what I wanted. So I wanted them to kind of be evenly spaced on the wheel as you spun the picker. So 1 seemed to do that. And on selected item change, so we're going to get an integer value for our index, and we don't want to do anything with that yet, so we can just leave it as a blank function. Let's see here. I think I've got too many closing braces. I'll put a comma there. Just kind of get it formatted pretty. All right, good. So then if we scroll back up to where our material is and our build context, which is doing nothing at this point, this is where we want to return select iOS. And so that when we click on it, will bring up and it's already filled in our context and our items. It'll bring up our modal pop-up. And when we hit save, we can see that our unit type has reappeared. So if we click that, there we go. We get our pounds. And it looks a little funky. I think what I'd like to do, and you can see this is the container that we created, which is 200 in height, and I think that's good. I think I'd like these to be a little bit bigger. And so I'm going to go to Styles Text, and I'm going to create a larger version of the body text for the picker. Let's try like 40. And we'll call this picker. And then we can go back to our drop-down button, and down in the Build Cupertino items, we can change body to picker. And that might be a little big. Let me see, unit type here. It seems a little large, maybe just a touch. Let me let's go back to text and let's try 35. So that looks pretty good. That's within the bounds. And when we have more options, we'll have, more scrolling backwards and forwards, look a little bit better. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. So, and when you click on it, unit type here, when you click on it, it goes away, and that's where this, that's where we'll call in this onSelected items change and record this in our state. All right, so just to kind of sum up where we are with both of these platforms, we have a products page, and we have different abilities in Material to go to our form and iOS. They look roughly the same. We have a material picker here, and we have an iOS picker here. Everybody's able to kind of work within their native platform and be happy and know exactly what to do, which is our goal. So that's enough for the form right now. So next time we'll come back and we'll start to address the state of both of these platforms so that these values are saved to a new product block, and then we can pass them on to Firestore from there. So that'll be next time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.